Welcome to Warmachine Wednesday, where we did not get a very substantial update from Steamforge today. So I've decided that instead we are going to make a tier list, a colossal tier list. My name's Ryan. I used to be good at Warmachine. Welcome to Spell Rack. I thought we'd do another just for fun topic today and rank the huge bases that we have amongst the Mark IV armies. We're going to start with Krix. Krix obviously has the newest huge base, only recently released. Let's look at the Hellraker. The Hellraker has created quite an interesting conversation in the community due to its Death Swarm head. After this model is placed by Tunneler, but before pushing enemy models as a result of Tunneler, enemy models within 2 inches of this model suffer an unboostable POW 12 melee damage roll. Probably should have started with his Tunneler ability. Tunneler says this model can forfeit its normal movement and be placed completely anywhere within 10 inches of its current location. After it has been placed, enemy models within 2 can be pushed up to 3 inches away. So that's a lot of displacement. 10 inches is a really far movement. I mean, the fastest Colossal we've seen is speed 6, and so you could charge 9. This one's placing 10. With this Death Swarm head, you're then hitting a POW 12 against a bunch of different models. It gives you a pretty incredible way to clear out chaff while also pushing everything 3 inches. You can push things off of objective. You could push things closer to other models that you want. There's a high amount of control with here. It also comes with a range 10 POW 14 gun. On its basics, it's got 2 range 3 POW 19 attacks, very solid. Carapace grenades is a once per turn. You can do a POW 12 damage to all enemies within 3 inches. Again, very good against small infantry. Debris field, enemy models treat open terrain as rough terrain within 4 inches. Not always going to matter, but sometimes you might need the Pathfinder card. What's really interesting on this one, though, is the void plates. If a model ends its movement or is placed within 3 inches of the Hellraker with a void plate, it loses 1 focus. So if you have a heavy warjack that charges, you have 3 focus to start with, presumably. You spend 1 to charge. Upon arriving at the Hellraker within 3 inches, you lose another focus. So you're down to 1 focus. So you can make your melee attack and you can buy an additional, and that's it. Probably the right way to run this model is with 1 void plate and 1 barbed net. Range 8, POW 15, and skewer. So if you damage a model, equal or smaller base, you can drag it to yourself. In this case, the Hellraker has an 18-inch threat to place, shoot 8 with a POW 15, and then you're dragging into yourself. And then once it gets drug into yourself, you've got 2 POW 19s to hit it with. I think the Hellraker is a really cool model. I think the Hellraker is in A-tier Colossal when you kind of compare it to its peer group. The real question, though, is how much does Krix even want it? And I think we're going to see that question answered over the rest of the year, the next few months, because I don't know that Krix needs the Hellraker that much. They have lots of other options, even though it's a really cool model. Let's move on to our Storm Legion. Here we have the Maelstrom. The Maelstrom was really interesting, I think, from a lot of perspectives because it has a buckler. The picture that's commonly shown with it, the picture that's in the thumbnail down here, is this big hammer and a buckler. Idea of giving something that's already 1119, making it 1120, really starts to add up stats when you have 56 boxes. Additionally, you're in Signar, and so you have access to Arcane Shield. So this thing can be armor 23 all the time. It does suffer from being speed 5, where a lot of the other ones have the option, at least, of being speed 6. Its main gun, Spray 12 POW 16, is incredibly powerful. POW 16 is a lot, especially if you're using a wolf feat, for example. The head options are not very exciting. Support gun options, range 14, POW 15, great. Range 14, POW 8, armor piercing, good if you want single target removal. Once you get it paired up with the buckler, you're going to have to pick what hammer you're using. So you have a range 3 POW 23 or you have a range 3 POW 22. Obviously, this one would hit significantly harder than the Krix Colossal at POW 19. though Crix does have other ways to, reduce and manipulate armor a little bit more. I think the Maelstrom is a pretty solid gunboat with, you can take two of these guys. You've got the big spray up top. You get to be armor 20, and you got a POW 23 that is range 3, as most of them are. The problem where the Maelstrom faces challenges is it doesn't have special rules. It's not digging in and moving and placing and killing chaff like the Hellraker is, and it's expensive. Having a bottom end of 30 and a top end of 35 points makes it rather expensive. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next up, we have our poor Winter Core. Winter Core definitely had a piece that dominated in 2024, and now the Mastodon is paying its punishment for how strong it was in 2024. Again, being one of the older Colossals, it doesn't really have any special rules up here. It is Rat 4. It has some cool guns, and it does have an option to go +1 Rat on the fire support here. Defense 8 means that this thing's always going to get hit, and armor 20 is nice. Armor 20 is higher than most. The heavy mortar is a great weapon, range 16, POW 16, AoE 4. Again, though, you're Rat 4, maybe Rat 5. You look at the cannons, range 14, POW 14, critical freeze, great. So you're probably boosting this thing if you need it to hit, which I guess makes the critical freeze more likely. And then the heavy cannons, these I believe used to be range 14, and then they were nerfed down to 12, and then POW 16 with momentum. That is a good gun. Let's go down to the melee weapons. Main axe, range 3, POW 23. Great axe, range 3, POW 24. That's the largest POW that we've seen on one of these weapons. Then you have another offhanded weapon with, again, more guns. Range 10, POW 15. Rate of fire 2 is very good. And the Grinder Fist is range 10, 2d3 POW 12s with volume fire. The Mastodon is very cool. Like, when I look at all these stats, I think this is probably a B tier model. But Rat 4, even at getting up to Rat 5, where everybody else tends to be Mat and Rat 6, I feel like just leaves the Mastodon in such a weak place. It's lost its range dominance above kind of all the other Colossals by losing some range. I want to like the Mastodon more, but I'm going to have to put it in C tier. Next, we'll head over to Shadow Flame with the Trike. The Trike is a model that has obviously had the entire community a little up in arms. The Trike is incredibly powerful. You can give it rapid healing, so every time it takes damage, it heals D3, so effectively 2 on average. You can get this thing to armor 23 pretty easily. We are dealing with a Gargantuan now instead of a Colossal, so it is Fury 4, so you get to spend more Fury than our Colossal counterparts. Really incredible about the Trike is all of its different abilities. Let's start with the Mene-eyed head here. This is a range 3 POW 19 blessed magical with purgation. Purgation says you gain an additional die on attack and damage rolls if something has an upkeep on it or an animi. Taking this head just prevents your opponents from putting buffs on their own pieces, because a POW 19 that's double boosted is gonna wreck anything. With the Flame Head and the Frost Head, you're just looking at some gun options here. So usually you're probably going to see the Flame Head, range 14, POW 15, AoE 3. Frost Head, spray 12, POW 14. It's very good, but a lot of times I always feel like I end up seeing the range 14 gun here. On this side, these other melee heads, range 3, POW 18, critical armor piercing, not very exciting. The Gulper head being range 3, POW 22, that is exciting. The Arcane Tails are really where this model shines. The Arcane Negation. When an enemy model targets this model or another model within 3 inches of it with a spell, you can force this model to negate the spell. So you cannot debuff the Trike. You can't debuff things next to the Trike. The negation head is incredibly powerful, and I would really say is kind of the signature ability of this model. If it can be armor 23 and then you can't debuff it, that creates a very powerful piece. Here again, we have range tails, range 14, POW 13, range 12, POW 14 with volume fire, obviously great. Versatility of this thing is exceptional. This model is very powerful and I think changes board states quite a bit. So for that reason, the trike for me is going to be in the S tier. Next up, we'll go to Sea Raiders and we'll look at the Garlgast, one of their monstrosities. Garlgast stat line significantly weaker than others, 818. We're normally seeing armor 19 or armor 20, and even sometimes like defense 11. It does have 72 boxes though, so that is part of this guy's kit, is he just has an insane number of boxes. Speed 6 is good, Mat 6, Rat. Base gun here, very solid, range 14, POW 15. The heads are really interesting. The frother here, you gain Pain Maddened. When this model is damaged by an enemy attack, it gains +2 speed for 1 round. Well, it's a speed 6 model. So if you can go to speed 8 and you have your range 2 attack here, that gives you quite a threat distance. Let's look and double check if any of the other attacks are range 3. So no. So this model, the only of the huge bases that only has range 2 weapons. You can take this head, you can get to speed 8, that's 2 more speed than anybody else gets, but you do give up 1 inch on your melee ranges, and so you're only net gaining 1 inch. I do think the spider head is very interesting. Drag and shadow bind. So obviously drag, you don't have to do damage. You can just start pulling models in. I don't love the D3 here. I wish it were just 2 shots to be a little bit more predictable. But it is interesting to be able to walk 6 and then shoot 9 and just drag something in while you're also getting a POW 18 attack. The rest of its guns are not that exciting. You have a spray 8, POW 14, and a spray 10, POW 11. Then you have the fists. You have the POW 20 and a POW 19. Again, neither of these are that exciting. I think where the Garlgast is solid is if you're running it cheap, closer to this 26 point range. Overall, though, I don't find it to be that incredible of a piece, so I'm going to put him in the B tier. Now we'll head over to the Brine Bloods, which this may be the coolest looking model of the bunch, maybe sans the Phantasm. But the Abyssal King, if you've seen one up close painted, they're really cool models. So speed 5, Mat 6, Rat 4. So you're paying for that rat, kind of like that Kador model was. A 1019 is a pretty respectable stat line here. Fury 5, so that's 1 more than the trike. And 28 to 31 points means the Abyssal King is pretty cheap for standard weapon that you have, range 12, AoE 3, POW 14. Again, this kind of looks like that profile that we've talked about before. The other ones were range 14, POW 15, so very similar. You come with 2 initials automatically. You have a POW 19, POW 22. POW 22 notably here is range 3, so that's important. Definitely has some range enhancement. This head here with awe, while within 5 inches of this model, living enemy models suffer -2 to attack rolls. So it's a way for the Abyssal King to buff himself and his allies while within 5 inches. The other head here is paralyzing gaze. While within 5 inches of this model, enemy models with line of sight to this model suffer -2 defense. It's really hard to not have line of sight to an Abyssal King. But giving -2 defense to stuff within 5 inches means that he's Mat 8 when he's in melee. And that is a significant buff over anything else that's in this list. Here we see the Triton figurehead taken far more often. Plasma Nimbus, being able to do POW 10s to infantry is pretty nice. Getting +1 speed, so now you're up to that speed 6 category. And that puts Abyssal King kind of on par with, some of your better Gargantuans and Colossals. What's really impressive, though, here is Indomitable. So for a cost of 1, you can give him Unyielding. So he gets +2 armor when he's in melee. So now you have a 1021. And then Trolls also, like most factions, have access to a +2 armor spell. So your Abyssal King is going to be a 1023. Which is pretty darn fantastic. All right, so let's look at its guns real quick. The main gun is a range 14, POW 15 crit knockdown. The powder cask, range 10, POW 15, you got an AoE here. I think most people are taking the main guns. Not only are they cheaper, but you get that long range 14, POW 15. Where the crit knockdown is really interesting on the Abyssal King is the way he can combo with some other warcasters in his faction to help with re-rolls like fortune and ways to fish for crits if you're adding dice or changing ones into sixes. You can do some pretty substantial things with the Abyssal King. At his price point, I feel like he's a mainstay in Brine Bloods and is a very powerful model. I'm going to put him up here in A. Last but certainly not least, we will head over to Dusk, my favorite model in the Phantasm. You could see a video that I recorded earlier in my series where I asked if the Phantasm would change the meta. And I think we actually have seen some evidence of that. It's one model in a faction that's a little bit below par, so you're only going to see so much change. But the Phantasm is really interesting because it gives Dusk a range game where it didn't otherwise have a range game, at least not a good one. So Dusk can now build a gun line. The Phantasm, for me, on its effect on a faction and changing the way a faction plays, I think it's an S tier model. That's just the way it changes the way Dusk plays. But let's look at how good it actually is as a model itself. Phantasm feels like it has the most average of the stat lines. Speed 6, Mat 6, Rat 6, the 1119. These are all reasonable numbers and none of them lower. The Phantasmal field is a very interesting defensive item here. For each focus on the Phantasm, it gains +1 defense to range attacks. If you've got your Phantasm sitting on 3 focus, it's defense 14. And shooting a defense 14, if you're at 6 and you need 8s, that feels really weird. The basic gun on the Phantasm is a very powerful one as far as its diversity is concerned. Range 12, POW 15, good. What's really neat though is the shot types. Kinetic grip, you can give a model -2 speed. It allows the Phantasm to win a lot of the Colossal v Colossal matchups because you can shoot the other Colossal, give it -2 speed, and now you out-threat it. The other one that's of significant note is Radiant Blast. On direct hit, models lose stealth and suffer -2 defense. Dusk does not have a lot of ways to buff attacks or lower defense, so it's a pretty significant tool. Here on the cheaper head, you have Focus Battery. So you get to hold on to your focus between rounds. It's what allows you to load him up and then take advantage of the Phantasmal field, and then next turn you're ready to go. His chest guns are kind of 50-50, although I see more of the Desolator. Again, we're back to this range 14, POW 15 gun that is pretty standard on a lot of these huge bases. What is really interesting is the Chronophage cannon, spray 10, POW 14 with powerful attack. You spend 1 focus, boost the whole thing. So there's a lot of focus efficiency in there if you want to go that route. The other 2 arms, these are identical. You either get a range 3 POW 21, powerful attack, crit decap. I think the rate of a crit on 3 dice is maybe in the high 40%. Then if you hit that decap, you're still in a powerful attack, so you're boosting damage too. You're probably going to one-shot something. The other weapon is kind of the same, range 3 POW 21 with crit decap, but what you gain is a range 12 POW 14 gun with Deathly Dominion. So it gives you some access to RFP, it gives you some access to additional attacks, where you shoot the first model and then it walks in and attacks something else. For me, the Phantasm, also the price point range, you could go really cheap at 26, or you could make it a little bit more expensive at 33. So as I started, I think the Phantasm is an S tier model for the way it changes Dusk. But really, I'm trying to look at these models a little bit more in isolation. And so I think the Phantasm has a sort of an A tier stat line and an ability. Just because it picks up a faction really is more of a sign of the weakness of the faction itself rather than a strength of this model. So that's it. That's my tier list. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching again. Until next time.